Welcome to episode 4 of the InTransit Podcast, brought to you by myself, Nerf. This episode is sponsored and brought to you by absolutely nobody, because this podcast at the moment is not sponsored by anyone, but maybe at some point in time it'll change. This is a podcast about logistics, about business, about sales and life, and it's an all-encompassing podcast with some ties to logistics in one form or another. And today I want to talk about the separation factor for freight brokers and really carriers too. Asset-based, non-asset-based providers of logistics services that will separate you from the pack. What will prove to be as a way for you to provide services to your customers that they will remember you as opposed to anyone else that solicits them for their business. With that being said, I would rather first start with what not to do, actions or inactions as a logistics provider in respect to being able to provide these services to your customers. And so what I mean by that is there are certain things you shouldn't ever do that will prevent you from issues and might ultimately lead to a huge service failure that will ultimately lead to you losing a customer. With that being said, I'd like to start the list off just with these things you should not do before we get to the things that you should do. With respect to things you should not do, you definitely should not be blaming the carrier for your own problems as a freight broker. And likewise, as an asset-based carrier, you need to own the mistakes that you make in your operations or your daily processes, your standard operating procedures. And these things can be anywhere from delays and updates that you give to your customers to quotes or misquotes that you handle. In addition to this, you definitely don't want to be positioning yourself as if you were some dictator or boss towards your partners in the movement of freight. You want to make sure that you are in a relationship, and a relationship is a compromise. A relationship is a two-way street, and a relationship is something that you have to build day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, decade by decade. And that's just the simple truth of the matter. You also don't want to be, if you're a broker, you don't want to be short paying your carriers for detention, for layovers, for any kind of driver assist labor that happens, or any sort of labor related additional accessorial fees that pop up. You want to be making sure that you pay your carrier for those additional costs that at the end of the day they have to incur. You also want to be trying to maximize the relationship and not the profit. And what I mean by that is you want to be asking the carrier where they need to be on a load, where they need to be on the rate, so they remain profitable, so they remain in the game, so you don't run them out of business. And this is very important as a freight broker, because this is where we get into the issues that are rampant in the industry in the current cycle that we're in, and that's cheap freight, where cheap rates are offered to customers, freight brokers or freight forwarders or whoever is in charge of attaining this business from the actual beneficial cargo owner. They receive these loads, then they go out and they get carriers for well below the operating costs that and they solicit and they procure and they select carriers that are unsafe, unlawful, unethical, horrible at service, and this just is a recipe for disaster. So if you're out there trying to maximize your profits and leaving carriers in the dust, this is not ethical business practices. People can debate me all they want on that, but those are not ethical business practices. And I oftentimes hear capitalism as the main excuse for that. But there are ways to live in a capitalistic society where the partners in any business transaction all benefit, and so no one feels like they got the short end of the stick. In addition to this, obviously, you want to be attentive to the carrier's questions. Any kind of comments, concerns, or inquiries they make, you want to be attentive to those. Don't just have it go in one ear and out the other. In addition to this, if you have to show appreciation for what they're doing for you, because without that asset you would not have the work. And likewise for the carriers on certain lanes, you would not have that lane if it wasn't for that 3PL or freight broker or whoever. So it's really a collaborative effort. So if you're always out there not showing appreciation and being disrespectful, that really goes to show what kind of company you may be working for, or what kind of processes you have in place that are detrimental to any kind of business relationship, for sure, and actually even personal relationship on that note. In addition to this, you want to be honest about the shipment details. Give the details of what's being moved, how it's being moved, why it's being moved, where it's being moved from, where it's being moved to, the actual weight, the actual pieces, the actual dimensions, and any kind of additional information that's required in order for the load to be safely and legally moved under all federal jurisdictions and regulations. Another big pain point would be responsiveness, communication. If you're ignoring calls from the carrier, if you're ignoring emails, if you've shut off all lines of communication and you've shut off all potential ways that carrier can get a hold of you, that is a huge red flag, and that needs to be worked on, because you will run yourself out of business with those kind of practices. And last but 100% surely not least would be if you're not paying your invoices to your carriers, and if you're not paying your invoices to your carriers on time, within parameters that are under your control, you should definitely be paying your carriers on time. If there is an issue, however, both brokers and carriers need to communicate with each other in a respectful manner. They have to be ethical in their approach to get the payment completed on time and in full. And this is a big reason why, and I've been there, and I'm sure there are freight brokers that will listen to this that have been there, that things just slipped and shouldn't have slipped, and things have, slipped through the cracks, and that should not be happening. Always look to do better, and always look to get to a point where you are so well off in terms of your processes that you are paying your carriers exactly on time as promised. If it's a quick pay, it surely is quick pay. If it's standard payment terms of 30 days, it's surely standard payment terms of 30 days. You can always offer solutions to your carriers for them to get paid immediately prior to those 30 days. But I believe ethical business practices, not holding loads hostage, are vital in this industry in order for us to have an industry that we can call home for decades to come. So those are things you definitely should not or should do in respect to the reciprocal of the not doing part. So for example, I said not paying your invoices in a timely manner, so the reciprocal of that is pay your invoices on a timely manner, right? So that would be what those are. And now on the good side of things, I like to say you want to be making sure that in order for you to have a scalable business in terms of your service level and who you are as a company and what you stand for, you got to be drinking the rich tea. And I don't mean going out and buying expensive tea. What I mean by that is you want to be reliable, integral with integrity. You want to provide communication, and you want to be honest. You want to have technology that's going to enable you to do better. You want to have the experience. You want to have the authenticity, and all of this falls under knowledge. and this is all-encompassing knowledge of your industry, from service all the way down to the sales process, all the way down to the operations process, and everything that's encompassing in all of those categories of your business. When it comes to the reliability, 24/7 ops gets a lot of heat and hate online, but the truth is it's where the money is at. And if you can prove to your customer how well you perform during the bedtime hours, you'll get called to the breakfast and lunch tables, as opposed to being a one night off, one-off type of deal. And it is huge if you can come up to a customer and save, a portion of their supply chain or an immediate need from sheer disaster. You have done yourself a huge favor. So logistics is not a 9-to-5 job. It is definitely a 24/7 operation if you want to be successful in what you're doing. In addition to that, you want to show integrity. Do as you say you will do. If you promise something, make sure you act like Amazon and fulfill it. Otherwise, don't promise it. In addition to that, you want to provide the proper communication. Over communication is a huge asset. You want to, send your customer the appropriate mandatory updates without fail. But in addition to this, you want to send them intermediate updates so that they know you care. And at the end of the day, the first part of that Rich T segment would be the honesty. You always want to tell the truth when in quoting, tendering, loading, in transit, delivery, and invoicing stages of the shipment or shipments. You never want to tell a lie, because one lie turns into 30 and that turns into 300. And the next thing you know, you've dug yourself a hole to China that you just can't get out of, and then you'll have to blank sail your way back to North America. And that's just the honest truth of that. And the second segment of that Rich T would be technology, experience, and authenticity. On the technology front, you want to, you have to enable yourself to work at faster speeds towards a resolution to resolve their pain points. So quoting software, the proper TMS software, and invoicing software, or any integration really of each of these within some conglomerate will help you become a better provider. You want to be showing them that you do have the experience, knowing the ins and outs, specifically when it comes to the transportation of your niche, whether your mode specific niche or commodity specific. That's going to be a huge value add to your customer. And at the end of the day, to really get the full gist of that Rich T, you want to be making sure that you're authentic and you're showing authenticity, doing things differently than everyone else. For example, if you're providing real-time automated tracking plus real-time loading and offloading pictures and dynamics, plus over communicating, plus adding in humor to your operations approach, you're separating yourself from the pack compared to some, 3-letter freight companies out there that really seem to not follow or not drink this Rich T formula for success as a company, where they're really focused on quantity rather than the quality of service, right? So that's where that comes into play. So that would be my little short excerpt in terms of what is good to do and what not to do when it comes to servicing your customers within logistics, whether you're niche specific or whether you are broad in terms of your services and industries that you service. You want to be making sure that you're giving your customer the utmost respect that they deserve. And in addition to all of that, the non-asset sides, treat your asset side partners as if they are your customers too, as if you're going to lose them today or tomorrow. Make sure that you're attentive to their needs and build that relationship, because that's really what will separate you from the pack. And collaborative logistics is the future, and to stay ahead of the game, you have to be open to new ideas. And I think this is just one of those ways to get the step ahead of the people in the industry that don't exactly uphold those values that we just discussed through all this. So again, that will be it for this short episode 4 of the InTransit Podcast. If you like this, make sure you hit the like button on any social media you find this at. If you feel that this was not for you, make sure you hit the thumbs down button on anything that you are listening this on, and hopefully there will be more of these and some guests along the way. So again, thank you for listening, and until next time, keep tracking and keep moving on. Cheers.